Since when does a 2 or 3 panel bureaucrat tell a company what to do and where they're going to build a plant?
That's not been resolved.
It's not been resolved.
That's what they're trying to
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah, so this is the type of thing that keeps going on with one regulatory agency after another. The Federal Trade Commission. What they're doing is, whether it's a toy manufacturer, a clothing manufacturer, you're finding companies closing down or shutting down because of their actions. What you're finding is such arbitrary rulings. One of the latest ones coming out, it's also one that's not in place yet, but they've told anybody that uses something like Tony the Tiger, you can't use characters in your marketing and advertising. You got to take them off your boxes. You can't do it. That's from the federal government. You know, in the Federal Communications Commission, they're the ones who, at Christmas time, when nobody was looking, imposed what a judge told them not to, what Congress told them not to. They imposed a thing called net neutrality, which is the first step towards controlling the internet. And with the Federal Communications Commission, they're the ones who, through various forms, are trying to stifle talk radio, talk TV, Christian radio, Christian TV, saying it's not held in the public interest. They have to meet all these standards. This is a real battle with a group of lawyers who have unlimited funds and unlimited time. These bloated agencies have got people sitting down, what can I do next? And they're destroying entrepreneurship and business and freedom in America. And few people talk about it. They'd rather talk about, here's my bill, let's pass it, let's spend a little bit more. Step 6, reform the bloated and unfair government employee pensions. Now there's 2 problems with the pension issue. There's a small group who took advantage of the system. Most teachers and most government employees, they're not making bloated pensions and reasonable pensions. But there are some who took advantage of the system and created 2 classes, an elite government class and everybody else. And it's outrageous what they've done. And then there's government salaries having been higher than the private sector for the first time in history. You know, instead of telling your kids, you should grow up and be a doctor, you better tell them, you better grow up and become a government bureaucrat. You better grow up and become a government employee. Because as a government employee, you won't be fired and you get more money than you would for the same job as you would for. Yes?
Those examples of there are city and local governments and stuff,
Yeah.
what's that got to do with the federal government? Who is it, Congress?
Good question. Because this is part of our problem. And with the federal government, it also has the bloated salaries of people making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000
I
a year.
don't think they're bloated like some of our local ones.
Well, the local ones are far worse.
Yeah,
They're far
you're
worse.
using examples up there.
Yeah, but you know what? See, a congressman, if they're doing their job, is a moral voice for the community of what's right and what's wrong. And this is part of our whole economic problem. The state of California is in such a crisis. To be silent in these areas, that's not something.
I
So-
think the federal government's got enough problems, you know, or issues they should.
Oh, they do.
addressing rather than
They do.
local city management.
Yeah.
They should be.
I'd like to hear the rest of it. I'd like to hear the rest of what you have to say.
Okay, yeah, but your point is well taken, and this is not federal, this is local, okay? So, and in here, you can see the city managers making $193,000 to $438,000. You know, city managers are usually on the golf course and stuff. 65 LA County officials ranking in over 300,000. These type of things are so outrageous. And the pension crisis is one that's going to cause the cities, the counties, the state, and into the federal government to have crisis. But there's a resolution to it. I mean, New Jersey came up with the ability of the Democrats and Republicans to start the first major step to reform in some of the pensions, outrageous pensions. And then there's repealing Obamacare, a health nightmare. You know, besides adding 6,000 IRS agents, Obamacare is one of the great issues for any business. They don't know how to expand, what to do, because you don't know what the costs are going to be. And so with Obamacare, I have a major problem with it, because if bureaucrats and boards decide there'll be poor care, rationing, probable tax money for abortion, we'll have a European-Canadian model that kills innovation. It becomes a $1 trillion entitlement. Now, one of the things about Obamacare that I think is important to recognize is it is the greatest centralization of power maybe in American history. Under the Secretary of Health, she has now 1,968 new and expanded powers. Can you imagine somebody in Washington telling your dental hygienist what type of equipment to use? That's what they're talking about prescribing. It's outrageous. And that's why I think it's going to be found unconstitutional, but I also want to go to Washington to try to replace it with something that makes more sense. Now, those were the 7 things that I've identified as economic problems. Now, with these economic problems, part of the solution is cutting spending, part of the solution is cutting waste, but that's not the only solution that you have for this. You know, you have the situation where you've got to have economic growth as well. And that's exactly what I'm suggesting, is that if we do the things I'm recommending, we're going to have a booming economy again. We're not going to see the economy we see around here. Economic growth explosion of 5 to 7% is projected based upon the economic policies that I recommend. Now, if you remember back in the 1970s, late 70s, we had a 13.9% inflation rate. With just a few of the recommendations that I made, we were able to get that down to a 4% under Ronald Reagan. Carter had a 17% unemployment rate. And after a few of the things I recommend, Reagan brought it down to 5%. So what we need to do is get the economic free market economy moving 5 to 7%. And the housing. The housing has been caused by the government. It's been prolonged by this economic crisis that we have. And whether your house has dropped 20%, 30%, or 40%, that's value taken away from you. We've got to be able to turn that housing market around, but it won't happen until we get these other things solved. And then we need to get the Federal Reserve under control, and this is going to create jobs. This is going to create price stability. It's going to create opportunity. It's going to create new innovations and new technology, because nothing is more powerful than the American people being able to be set free to pursue their own goals and not be hindered by government that keeps interfering with entrepreneurship. As a free people, we're going to be able to move this economy ahead so the kids will get jobs, so the kids will be better off than we're better off, that there'll be new technology and new innovations like we can't believe. But it's not going to happen if we continue on the way we are now. So there's other issues that we can talk about. You know, the reckless foreign policy. One of the issues that's concerned to me has been the undermining of Israel and the actual taxpayers' money going to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas that's now are in collusion to basically destroy the state of Israel, telling the people that in their capital they can't build housing, to shun the leaders of Israel like we had. It's something that has troubled me. But there's also more trouble too. You got Libya. I can't believe we're spending billions of dollars in Libya. It's supposed to be, what, a couple of weeks? It goes on and on and on with billions and billions of dollars being spent. And you know what? President Obama didn't go to Congress like he should have. He went to the UN. He went to NATO. And when Congress tried to hold him accountable a couple of weeks ago, he was basically ignored. Yeah. So, you know, we've got an out-of-control, reckless foreign policy. And then we got the assault on individual liberty. I'm very concerned about the internet And I mentioned net neutrality. Let me mention one other thing. Just before Egypt fell, many in Congress and the Obama administration were talking about how it's absolutely necessary because of cyber spies and stuff, that we had to have an internet kill switch. And they were talking about how we have to have that internet kill switch. Until Mubarak in Egypt used the internet kill switch, and everybody was horrified, and nobody could get on the internet. We need to have it protected against any government abuse and any interference with free speech. We've got to oppose centralization of power by the government. Things work better at the state level, at the local level, with private hands. So the bottom line, big government, your freedom is gone. You have fewer choices. Government, career politicians keep wanting more and more. And they are so callous